The summit was in May of 1989. It was called Symposium 2000. It was designed to put a boost into the business community and to involve the business community more directly in the management or development of business opportunities. George Ryder was the MP at the time, and he kind of fathered the idea of the conference.
One of the first things we did in the early stages is interview different business people around town in preparatory work for developing the conference. And the consultant we had working with us, Tom Burns, and myself, we went out and interviewed Len at his old Lockwood Windows office. And I'd never met Len before, and I went out there with this image of this epitome of the old established business community, and I wasn't sure what I was going to encounter. And it was a really interesting meeting. I mean, first of all, Len was totally different from what I had anticipated as an individual. I mean, he certainly knew what he was talking about, and he'd already had a lot of years through provincial involvement with development in the province, so he knew exactly what we were talking about above and beyond his own business. And really what was of interest when we drove away after the meeting, Tom said to me that he's a guy who is a real stakeholder in the community, and you got to target him and get him involved.
Len's ability to understand complex topics was high, very high, higher than most people's, and to work in harmony with others. And in Greater Moncton, that's sometimes quite a challenge, because you've got the tri-communities for one, so you've got 3 mayors and 3 councils, and of course they all want to do well for themselves, and so different interests, and then you've got the different cultural groups. And Len had a tremendous ability to work in a effective and a highly effective way, a high level of diplomacy and understanding and appreciation and empathy for where everybody was coming from and what everybody needed. But I think Len also knew that what the community needed was everybody pulling together.
The story of Moncton is one of the great stories of economic revival in all of Canada. And for years, I've been invited to speak in communities across Canada to talk about the Moncton Miracle. Well, the Moncton Miracle was never a miracle at all. It was a triumph. It was a triumph of community and community leadership over despair. It was a triumph of a positive attitude, of just making things happen by sheer persistence.
He is the epitome of a cool, planned, efficient leader. I met him when Moncton was going through its whole rebuilding process after the closure of the shops, and he's really the person that brought the community together in an effective, efficient way. You can't overestimate the role he had.
To this day, I've never known what his politics were. I've never known what political persuasion he was, because he just worked with whatever level of government was in office. He worked with the federal people, worked with the city of Moncton, he worked with us provincially and in the community. And as a result, I think in large part of Len Lockhart's leadership, Moncton became the can-do city in Canada.
Len had a kind of statesman-like quality to his presence, people looked up to him, and I did, and no question about it. Len was a role model for me and a mentor for me and a friend, and I certainly wasn't alone. He was that for a lot of people. So an individual like that can pull people together and encourage them to work collaboratively and with a single focus, and to overlook their individual, sometimes petty needs, and to get them looking at the bigger picture and saying, gosh, if it's good for the region, even though it perhaps is happening in this community or that community, it benefits everybody, So I guess the way I think about that, it's kind of like someone who's leading, a group of people who are climbing a mountain, and their point of view is, either we all get to the top or none of us get to the top.
Len was about the community and making this a better place to work and live for our families. And whether it be in education, whether it be in health, whether it be in the arts. Len always had an interest in how we can make this place a better place.
I think that's what really struck me, is that this guy wasn't simply a hard-nosed businessman who was just solely focused on his business. He wasn't, and at least not my impression of him, is that he saw a bigger picture of what was good for him was also good for the area, and vice versa. What's good for the area is also good for him and his family and so on. And that's really I think the statement. He cares about his community and his province.
The key thing that Len did was, in many ways, it wasn't that he championed anything in particular, he just kept everything in harmony, he created a climate of more harmony. And Moncton had been a very clamorous place over the years in many areas, one in particular being language. And he really fathered a lot of the outreach. One of the points that came out of the Symposium 2000 was that we needed to embrace the University of Moncton more. We needed to encourage them to be more part of economic development activities, research and development, communicate more. We needed to, as the community, need to reach out to them more, and that's been largely successful.
I remember once him coming up to Fredericton when I was deputy and saying, listen, I know you're getting a lot of pressure from the other communities saying that, you know, you're being unfairly promoting Moncton, etc. And I laughed at him. I said, Len, I'm just working with anybody who will work with us. If you make it work, we're happy to. Don't worry about it. So he was very conscious of not insulting other communities. I knew that we had some political pressure from other people, but we just said, listen, Len, don't worry about it. You just go about your business.
When we would bring a business to Moncton, they'd be overwhelmed by the enthusiasm of the city and by the response that they received. And they wanted to be in a community that wanted them. And that's what Len brought. He delivered the community. And that's what made Moncton such a powerful place to do business.
I wanted to say openly and right out loud, you know, that you know, Len Lockhart is just one of the finest human beings I've ever known. So. Yeah.
Now, just like any business, you have to reinvest and you have to reimagine yourself for the next generation. So a 25 to 30 year cycle in business is a generation. And we have come through a successful one. And in some cases, that can be harder. Businesses that have had success have kind of a legacy set of understandings, and they're not necessarily going to tear everything down and start over. One of the issues that Len was thrust into is that we dismantled a lot of what used to be there at the same time that the civic administration was re-engineering itself to be a little more sophisticated than the way that it managed the city of Moncton or the city of Dieppe or town of Riverview. So he played a good role with mayors in giving that kind of business advice.
As people come in here, that it's very important to understand your competitive advantage and to have things done for them so that it's really absolute seamless service. At the same time, this time there's much more opportunity in helping local entrepreneurs. Wasn't really the focus back then. It's a very different environment. Today we don't have all the labor, qualified labor that was looking for things. Labor is a big problem for us now. And so you have to think about it differently. And certainly, whether it's IT and some of the startup business, a lot of businesses that are looking at succession, what you do in terms of mentorship, helping those young people is probably should be a much bigger focus than what we saw in the 1990s.
It's all about leadership. It's all about people. And that's where it starts. And I think we got great people living in this community. And that's what we have to do, is rally our people, get them enthusiastic about this city and what it has to offer, and get out and sell it and promote it. And when we do have local people that want to expand their businesses, or we have people that want to come here and visit and look at investing in the city, We got to welcome with both open arms and really give them the red carpet. I've lived it, I've seen it happen, I know it can happen, and we just have to get on with it, make it happen. Words are only as good as actions.
Your economic growth is driven by committed community leaders who have skin in the game. So the idea that you get people who are writing payroll checks, you get people who have to make those mortgage payments on those warehouses and buildings and trucks that are so much part of our distribution commerce today, that's the key to Moncton's future. It's really a little bit of the past, it's a little bit of Back to the Future.